Recency bias. It happens anytime we talk about the greatest of all time. So if you're, I'd say, under the age of 25, you want to make an argument that the greatest of all time is going to be Connor McDavid, cool. My age range, will usually make the argument Gretzky's the greatest of all time, fine. And for the generation before mine, the argument would have been Gordie Howe, Bobby Orr. And so when we get into talking about the greatest of all time, the conversation, well, it does have some recency bias. Now, the Hockey News just posted their, or just published their top 100 defensemen of all time. I finally got it. I was starting to wonder if I was ever going to get a Hockey News magazine again. But I got this, and the spoilers are right on the front. So they have Bobby Orr at number 1. This is number 3. This is Nick Lidstrom. And this is the subject of today's video, Doug Harvey of the Montreal Canadiens. Now, one of the criticisms with Montreal players is often, well, they were a great team, so they're helped out by the team because the players are really good. So Doug Harvey comes into the Montreal Canadiens fold, and he would be very, very popular in general. And he is number 2 on the Hockey News' rankings. And yet when I see top 5s posted, I'll see, well, I think Leach and Potvin and these guys all belong in top 5. And it's like, well, but historically in a league with 100 years of history, there's going to be some guys that we didn't see, whether it's Eddie Shore or in this case, Doug Harvey. So he comes in. He had been a Canadian Navy boxing champion during World War II. It's an interesting little tidbit there, isn't it? And he was tough. And yet, while he put up his share of penalty minutes, he was the smoothest defenseman in the game. So he wasn't straight up fast. Like Bobby Orr, he played the game at a speed that nobody else could. So, and he completely revolutionized what it meant to be a defenseman. Harvey was just an excellent defenseman. He was the best at his position. And he was a 10-time first-team All-Star for a reason. He comes into the league in 47-48, 35 games played, 4 goals, 4 assists. Again, defensemen at this age don't put up a lot of points. This is, you're a defenseman, you play back. 48-49, 55 games played, 3 goals, 13 assists, 16 points. He makes a playoff debut, plays 7 games for Montreal with 1 assist. 49-50, 70 games played, 4 goals, 20 assists, 24 points. And in the playoffs, 2 assists in 5 games. Again, very reasonable point totals. And for that age, not too shabby for a defenseman. 1950-51, 70 games played, 5 goals, 24 assists, 29 points. And in the playoffs, 11 games with 5 assists. So they're getting there. Remember 11 games back then? That means you went pretty far in the playoffs. We weren't at the stage where you'd see 24 or 27 games being played by any teams in the playoffs. 51-52, 68 games played during the regular season of a 70-game regular season. 6 goals, 23 assists, 29 points. And in the playoffs, 11 games played again and 3 assists. Notice, no goals in the playoffs. Standard. Again, you're the defenseman, you play back. 52-53, 69 games played, 4 goals, 30 assists, 34 points. The 30 assists were 7th in the National Hockey League that year. In the playoffs, 5 assists in 12 games, and he gets his first Stanley Cup. And the Norris Trophy would come into the NHL a year later. So 53-54, 68 games played, 8 goals, 29 assists, 37 points. In the playoffs, 10 games played and 2 assists. He finished 3rd in the league in penalty minutes with 110 that year. So he could throw down if he needed to, as stated by him being a boxing champion, but that really wasn't entirely part of his game. Again, he could do it if he had to. Now, 54-55, 70 games played, 6 goals, 43 assists, 49 points. He's 2nd in the league in assists that year with 43. And in the playoffs, he gets 8 assists in 12 games. So he still has the 1 Stanley Cup ring to his name, and now in 55, he's added a Norris Trophy. So the Norris Trophy will have his name on it a lot. 55-56, 62 games, 5 goals, 39 assists, 44 points. Those 39 assists are 6th in the National Hockey League. In the playoffs, 10 games played, 2 goals, 5 assists, 7 points. It's 1956. He gets his first goal in the playoffs. And he already won a Stanley Cup, and he'd already been in a Montreal uniform for about a decade at that time. And, oh yeah, he wins the Norris Trophy again. 56-57, 70 games played, 6 goals, 44 assists, which is 4th in the NHL, 50 points. 10 games, 7 assists, another Stanley Cup. This is the Montreal team that went on a record run for Stanley Cups in a row. A run that will never be destroyed. There's no way that any team ever breaks this record. This is an unbreakable, indestructible record. 58, 59, 61 games, 4 goals, 16 assists, 20 points. In the playoffs, 11 games played, 1 goal, 11 assists, 12 points. 57, 58, forgot this one. 68 games, 9 goals, 32 assists, 41 points. In the playoffs, 10 games, 2 goals, 9 assists, and 11 points. Stanley Cup, 131 penalty minutes, which was 3rd. So again, he got penalty minutes in there, and since it's an odd number, there was at least one major in there. And again, all those Stanley Cups, he starts getting goals at that stage. So later in his career, he starts getting goals here and there. 2 of them in 58, 1 of them in 59, and 2 of them in 56. He's going crazy with the goals. 59-60, 66 games played, 6 goals, 21 assists, 27 points. In the playoffs, 8 games played, and he gets 3 goals, no assists. They win the Stanley Cup. That's his last Stanley Cup. Also, 1960, he is still the Norris Trophy winner. The only year he doesn't win a Norris Trophy in and amongst here, Tom Johnson wins it in 1959. Tom Johnson also played for the Montreal Canadiens, because of course he did. So Pierre Pilote would eventually become the guy who carried the trophy until this kid Bobby Orr came along to get it. But in 61-62, he ends up with the New York Rangers. So Montreal's looking to get younger. There's a debate between Harvey and Montreal management, and Montreal management, being the guys who make the decisions, they trade him. So he gets moved to the New York Rangers. And he's a coach for the New York Rangers as well. So 69 games played in 61-62, 6 goals, 24 assists, 30 points. They're out of the playoffs. They get 6 games from him in the playoffs with 1 assist. As the coach, he wins the Norris Trophy as well. So when we talk about, well, this guy was great. Well, that guy was pretty good. Yeah, I guess he's one of the greats. If anybody wants to shrug off Doug Harvey, he's coaching, and he's the Norris Trophy winner as the best defenseman in the league. 62-63, 68 games played, 4 goals, 35 assists, 39 points. 63-64, he only played 14 games. 2 assists. And then this is where, to me, the legend really becomes major. He ends up playing in the CPHL and the AHL until 66-67. And this is after he is the only man to ever win Norris Trophies back-to-back on different teams. So he wins the Norris Trophy here, wins his final Norris Trophy in 62. It would be completely understandable if at the end of the 63-64 season he had said, I'm done. I'm done. I'm out of hockey. I'm done. He doesn't. He continues on in hockey. 66-67, he surfaces with the Detroit Red Wings for 2 games in the regular season. Just 2. Plays the 2 games in the regular season for Detroit. I'll just move this over so it's not so much glare. And then he ends up with St. Louis. Now, the interesting thing is he doesn't play any regular season games for St. Louis in the 67-68 season. But in the playoffs, he plays 8 games and gets 4 assists. So 68-69, they throw him back on the ice. 70 games played, 2 goals, 20 assists, 22 points. Not bad for a player who's 45 years of age and hadn't been regular in the NHL in 5 years. So he ends up with 1,113 games played as a National Hockey League player. Remember, there's 5 years in the AHL here. 88 goals, 452 assists, 540 points. The 88 goals, that's low because it was a different game. And defensemen were not expected to score goals until Bobby Orr came along and said, look what I can do. And in the playoffs, 137 games played, 8 goals, 64 assists, 72 points. So he has 6 Stanley Cup rings. He has all these Norris trophies, just tons of Norris trophies, including the one as a coach. So what happens with the Hall of Fame? Well, he's eligible in 1972. Does he get in 1972? No, he doesn't. He gets in 1973. And there was a lot of debate about whether or not he had been excluded in 1972 because of his well-documented drinking problem. And whether that's why he did or didn't. When he gets inducted in 73, he basically sends his wife with a note saying, that's nice, I don't care. Did not accept the ring. And was very adamant, basically, that it was wrong to keep him out of the Hall of Fame for a year. And again, I've talked about this. This still happens. This still happens where a player has the resume to get into the Hall of Fame and doesn't right away because, well, we didn't want to put him in as a first ballot. Why? Well, this guy's not in the Hall of Fame because reasons. And you know it's something off the ice. And I think that's wrong. I think you should put a guy into the Hall of Fame based on what they did, unless you can find cheating. So this is where the difference between why guys are or aren't in with baseball compared to hockey. Unless you can find that, like with baseball where you had the steroid scandal, unless there was something like that hockey related to keep a guy out, I don't think there's a legitimate reason to keep a guy out. And certainly not a reason to keep Doug Harvey out for a year. But his drinking problem was well documented. And it caused him to have problems holding on to a job as a scout or any kind of management job within the NHL or any league for that matter, because he really enjoyed the drinking. When he was a coach for the New York Rangers, part of what he hated about that job was he couldn't go out drinking with the guys after the game. That was against the rules, so he'd watch them go out to the bar and he'd have to go home. And that he didn't like that idea at all. Now, one thing with him too is that he was stubborn and kind of hot-tempered off the ice. There was a story I was reading about him. The Habs used to go around and play softball, and they were playing softball in a prison. And he wasn't happy with a pitch call, so he got up in the umpire's face. Well, the umpire's an inmate. And Doug Harvey had no problem getting right up in his face about how he felt about a call. So definitely competitive. And yet, on the ice, cool and calm. No panic. Not the fastest skater, but he didn't have to be. He made the game slow down to his pace. And there are discussions of how much he played during any specific game. He may have averaged 40 minutes a game. We didn't track time on ice back then. Back then it was, you just play. And I mean, I'm old enough to remember that too, where guys would just play and you'd be like, yeah, he's played a ton tonight. And that was it. We didn't get into how many minutes a guy had played, and, coaches weren't managing that as like they do now. So about 40 minutes a night in his heyday, and this is during the original 6 era, where, scheduling's a little easier with travel and the schedule's a little lighter, but still 70 games if you're playing about 40 minutes a night. That's a lot. So no panic on the ice, and really, really popular guy. Apparently all of his teammates loved him. I think the coaches did too. It was just, you couldn't employ him afterwards. He would die of cirrhosis of the liver in, I believe it said 1989. So and that's one of those things you've got to watch. That if you've been a heavy drinker, you've got to watch. You got to pace yourself a bit. So there's both a great career here and a cautionary tale. But in the end, what we care about when we're naming best defenseman, what we care about when we're putting guys in the Hall of Fame or not, is, well, what was their career like on the ice? Because there have been absolutely great, fantastic guys who don't belong in the Hall of Fame. That if you were going to say, well, the Hall of Fame is about personality or about being a nice guy, well, that guy has to be in there. The resume's not there. And in this case, the resume was there. He should have been in 1972. So it is a debate to be had, definitely this day and age, about, when guys get inducted and why certain players get held out. And maybe it all originated with Doug Harvey. Tell him to take that ring, and, well, I don't want to say what he said to do with the ring, but I don't think it was very friendly. But hey, there you go. The career of Doug Harvey. That, according to the Hockey News, the second best defenseman that ever played. And for most of us, I'm going to guess there may be some older subscribers who remember Harvey back in 1969. I wasn't born then. So before people put it in the comment section, I wasn't born then. So don't start. But anyways, there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I'll talk to you again soon.